Hello, and a very warm welcome indeed to this afternoon's iOB business webinar. It's a pleasure to have you here, and my name is Ben. I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business. Now, before we get started today, for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, a very warm welcome indeed. It's a complete pleasure to have you here, and so glad that you could join us. For those of you returning and joining us again, it's a pleasure to have you on here as well. Thank you so much for taking the time. So today, we've got a very interesting topic planned out ahead for us. We're going to discuss why it is acceptable to change your path as you progress. Okay, so for those of you that are joining us for the first time on one of these iOB business webinars, let's run through just for a moment how these work. Okay, so we'll do a brief introduction with myself before we begin. Once again, my name is Ben. Then what we do is we dive into a presentation, and the presentation usually runs for around about 15 to 20 minutes or so. Okay, now throughout the presentation, you are more than welcome to ask any questions that you might have. And in between each topic, we're going to take a brief pause so that you have a chance to ask me any questions and indeed jot down any notes that you might have throughout the webinar as well. So please don't worry, please don't feel left behind, because we will make sure that you have ample opportunity to ask away. Okay, so any questions that you do have, you can pop them into the gray Q&A box at the bottom of the screen there. Okay, so just whilst we're waiting for everybody to join us for today's session, I will go ahead and get it set up on screen there. Okay, so right before we kick off, you could do me a big favor and just let me know if you can hear my voice okay, and if you can indeed see the presentation on screen okay, and if everything is good to go, then we will get ready to rock. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch off my video now, so you shouldn't be able to see my face anymore, but you should still be able to see the screen that we have up for you. Okay, so I'm just going to do a brief check and see that we are ready to kick off. Perfect. Looks like everybody can hear me, and looks like everybody can see the screen as well. Okay, perfect. So why is it acceptable to readjust your path as you progress? Okay, that's today's conversation. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to run through why it's acceptable, and not only that, maybe even why it's encouraged to continually adjust your path as you progress. Okay, we all have our wonderful, great visions, and we want to make sure that these come to light. But I'm going to share with you a few kind of inside tips to make sure that you are indeed doing your best as you go along. Okay, so your presenter right before we kick off, my name is Ben. I am a business coach, and I specialize in working with small businesses, helping them to achieve stability and growth. Okay, this is what I do. This is my passion. This is what I get to do every single day. So it's always a real pleasure to be on here presenting these iOB business webinars with yourselves. Okay, so today's session, we're going to cover three things as always. Number one, on the itinerary, we have the topic of we evolve as business leaders, followed by desirables change. And we are going to wrap up today with a refreshed perspective is never negative. Okay, so kicking off with topic number one. Now, once again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Pop them in the gray Q&A box at the bottom, and it would be our pleasure to get to them at the end of the session for you. Okay, we're going to do a brief Q&A session at the end, if I haven't already said that, after the presentation today. Okay, so topic number one, we evolve as business leaders. Okay, so what does this mean specifically? Well, as a digital agency grows, its priorities may change from what was originally mapped. Okay, now in simple theory, what this means is everybody begins their venture, their journey with a sort of pre-mapped plan in mind. Okay, this is what I'm going to achieve. This is who I'm going to grow my business with. This is the achievables I want to hit. These are the types of clients that I'm going to serve. Okay, so let's highlight something important here. It's always a great idea to have these kinds of things mapped out, clarified, and realized. Okay, now you don't really want to dive into the business without having these things clarified, because they act as a very, very important guide. However, what you must realize is that as your business grows and develops, your priorities might change. Okay, and these priorities may be different from what was originally mapped, quote unquote. Okay, so mapped essentially means what had you planned, what had you thought, what did you believe was going to happen before you kicked off the digital agency versus what's happening now. Okay, this is just a fundamental rule of business. So here's a cool sort of important piece of content we need to clarify amongst ourselves right now. Okay, many great leaders of many great companies have had to continually realign their vision to ensure that they are doing the best by their clients and by their team. Okay, so most large organizations of significant stature have significant teams that help run those organizations. Okay, now one of the priorities of taking care of these large organizations and making sure that they're running as well as efficiently as they can is making sure that the people helping to run them are happy and satisfied. Okay, so as the workplace dynamic develops, as we adjust, when we had COVID, a lot of people began working from home because it was safer. And now that people are being reintroduced to this sort of office atmosphere, there may be some changes, temporary work from home days, things like that are being introduced to make staff happy. Now, this was almost an unprecedented, kind of evolution that none of us could have really seen coming. And it was something that was fairly difficult to understand at the time. And it's your classic example, your sort of prime ideal of what could essentially define an unprecedented change. Okay, priorities, maneuvering, changing, okay, optimizing. Now, that's just one example. Okay, you can also look at things where leaders of companies have to continually realign their vision, okay, to ensure that they're doing the best by their clients. Okay, so are we updating services? Are we making sure that something has been updated, improved, evolved for the people that we serve? Okay, now every business has a service of some kind or a product of some kind, and they serve a certain market of people or businesses. Okay, now with this in mind, we need to be aware that this is going to change, this is going to evolve, this is going to adapt. Now, great leaders are great leaders because they understand this, amongst many other reasons. Okay, so many great leaders are many great companies, and the reason they become great companies is because they are aware that we cannot remain stagnant. We must always be evolving, changing, optimizing, and adapting. Okay, so at the beginning of our journey, it's not always easy to forecast exactly what we would like from our business. Now, if you were somebody that struggled with this in the past, worry not. And I want this to act as some reassurance for you, because we have all been there at the start of our business journeys. If this is something that is happening to you right now, or potentially you're thinking about starting a business, or maybe you already have one, okay? You cannot always be certain of what is happening in your future, okay? You might not be exactly sure on exactly what you want or exactly how you're going to achieve it, okay? And this is fine. It's mostly fine because we can always adapt, change, and improve it. Okay, but it's additionally fine because you can't be expected to know all the answers before you've even started. Okay, so a lot of us learn as we go. We begin to figure out things. Clarifications become obvious as we progress. You think, okay, yeah, well, that financial goal makes sense for the business. We can do that. Okay, whereas before, you might not have had a service offering clarified. You might not have had anything kind of put in place to understand what your earning potential was. Now that you do, it's easier to clarify what your earning forecast could look like. All right, so that's just one example again. So at the beginning of our journey, it's not always easy to forecast exactly what we would like from our business. All right, now the evolution of your work habits will have an effect on the type of digital agency you would like to lead. Okay, so again, let's run through the different types of digital agency. Okay, we've got your one-person shows, where that's more of like a solo agency. They're running it by themselves and they enjoy this kind of atmosphere. Okay, so priority there might not necessarily be hiring or outsourcing. Priority could be making the situation better for their clients, making machines more efficient, making their software more intelligent. Okay, now if you are somebody who wants to grow a team, you might find that your priorities are in taking care of that team. Okay, providing benefits, bonuses, perks, making sure that they're happy, making sure that they work well together, that they're gelling as a team, teamwork activities. Okay, so the evolution of your personal work habits will ultimately have an effect on the type of digital agency that you would like to lead. Okay, so your personal work habits, if you want to step away and you want your digital agency to run a little bit more without you, okay, not so much of your personal involvement, again, that's fine, but you're going to need somebody to take the reins from that. So your personal habit of wanting to take time away from the business means that you're going to have a sculpture of this digital agency that you want to develop, okay, or sculpture in mind, and you slowly begin to put the pieces of that together. Okay, so now that brings us to the end of topic number 1. And what we're going to do is I'm going to leave this on screen for you for just a moment, take a brief pause, give yourself a chance to jot down any questions you have for me, and indeed take any notes, and I'll see you very shortly for topic number 2. All right, perfect. So hopefully you've had a chance now to jot down any notes and indeed ask any questions. I've just seen one come in, so I'll grab that at the end. Thank you so much. Okay, so moving on to topic number 2 now, we're talking about the fact that desirables change. Okay, so let's crack on. Okay, the landscape of business in the digital world is always changing. Okay, now if you have been involved in any way before in the digital sphere, the digital landscape, digital services, if you've even used them yourself, if you're a user of social media, okay, even, you'll be aware that it's always changing. There's always updates, there's always adjustments, there's always improvements, there's always optimization. Now, sometimes you like these updates, sometimes you don't, okay? But it's on the major tech companies like Facebook to make sure that they try and make everybody as happy as possible, okay? They've got lots and lots and lots of users and they want to keep as many people as they can happy, okay? But they're also aware that if they don't update, optimize, change their platform, they may get left behind, okay? Other social media platforms are updating and improving. So if they don't, they may begin to lose people to their competitors, okay? So the landscape of business in the digital world is always changing. You need to be aware of this. The reason I say this is not necessarily because of that. It's because when the landscape of our industry is changing, it's going to force us to change as well, okay? So we're going to see changes, improvements, optimization. Like I said, maybe we do like them, maybe we don't, but it's happening either way. Okay. Now, this is going to force a chain reaction of priorities to change within organizations that operate in the digital landscape. Okay. As a digital agency, again, it's just a fundamental pillar that we work with major platforms. Okay. Now, it doesn't really matter what industry we're in. Often we work with bits of software, we use technology to run our businesses. Okay. We do rely on this. So your priorities, your ideals, they might change when something else changes, okay? So say that the reporting feature within Facebook changes. Your priority is now to churn out more reports for your clients because it's easier to get them, okay? So important to be aware that external changes can also affect how your priorities might change as well. And this is a good thing, okay? If you started your business 5 years ago, there could be new options and development opportunities available to you now. Okay, so potentially a piece of software that didn't exist 5 years ago does exist today. Okay, for example, clients can automatically book themselves into meetings in your calendar. Not so long ago, that wasn't as easy as it is today. And even longer ago, it wasn't even possible. Okay, so this is an update. Okay, social media, really in its current form, as sophisticated as it is today, a few years ago, it was significantly less advanced. We didn't have as many options. Scale back to 15, 20 years ago, social media just wasn't really a thing. It just didn't exist. Okay. So by social media, what we're talking about here is online platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, like Twitter, like YouTube, So what you must realize is that as your business progresses, as it gets older, as it gets more mature, you're going to sort of notice that new things are popping up, new capabilities, new potentials are being given to you, okay? Whether it be in the form of software, whether it be in the form of management techniques, whether it be in the form of operational efficiencies, sales methods, okay? Something's been discovered that you can capitalize on now, okay? Again, these are great things. If you want to remain as an agile, independent, strong business, you've got to make sure that you are open-minded when change comes along, okay? You're willing to accept the fact that this might be your new way of doing business and for good reason, okay? So we may meet certain individuals and leaders who can open our eyes to new opportunities, okay? If you've ever worked with a mentor or a coach, okay? Now, one thing that I would always suggest, and again, this is to you as a business coach, that I would always avoid doing is considering yourself to be somebody who knows everything or almost everything there is to know about your industry or what you do, okay? Because I can absolutely assure you there's virtually no one out there who knows everything about a specific niche or topic, okay? There are always things changing, always things to learn. And not only that, there are different techniques and arguments are made about which techniques are better, okay? So what I want you to do here is not necessarily immediately change your way of thinking, but just be aware that potentially somebody you meet, somebody you do business with, somebody that's introduced into your network might have a different perspective, okay? Even if not something completely new. And that fresh perspective can really, really be a useful thing, even if you just compartmentalize it as part of your overall theory to continue improving as a business, okay? So if you have reached your glass ceiling, okay, now past or present, if you've hit a glass ceiling in the past, or you currently feel like you're hitting a glass ceiling now, you will inevitably desire a change in your business anyway, okay? Now, glass ceiling essentially means we feel like we've hit our cap. Now, the reason it's called a glass ceiling is because glass ceilings can be broken, okay? So if you haven't heard this analogy before, glass ceiling essentially means it's a sort of metaphorical ceiling that mentally we believe that we've reached, that we can't go past, okay? So maybe we should be earning more money, but we believe that we can't, okay? But somebody who has an outside or external objective opinion might see how we can, in fact, earn more money, despite our internal belief that we can't, okay? That's what you would call the glass ceiling. So with this theory in mind, past or present, if you have hit a glass ceiling, you will desire change, okay? It's just fundamental. You want to desire this change because you want to improve. Again, that's a good thing. It's a very good thing, okay? So once again, we'll take a brief pause now at the end of topic number 2, and we will very shortly be moving on to topic number 3, okay? All right, excellent. So hopefully you've now had a good moment to ask any questions and indeed jot down any notes that you might have for us there today and for yourself. Okay, so number 3, topic number 3, a refreshed perspective is never negative. Okay, I tell you this because it's all about how you handle the perspective or the change of perspective. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. You can make sure that it's put forward as a positive thing in your mind, in your mental space, in that of your business as well. Okay, so reviewing our targets, objectives, and larger goals is a healthy exercise. All right, so you find that, okay, sometimes we have to look in the mirror. Sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves and say, look, we set these objectives a little while ago. We haven't hit them now, okay? There's something that hasn't fallen into place. There's something that hasn't clicked, okay? Now, whether it be that we've fallen short on our commitments, whether it be that we didn't see something through to the end, whether it be that possibly that was just the wrong objective, for one reason or another, we haven't hit that yet, okay? Now, whether this be through personal fault, whether it be through the fault of the business, doesn't really matter, okay? But sometimes you have to look in the mirror, review your targets, objectives, and larger goals. This is a healthy thing to do. Now, many of us don't want to look back, okay? Now, I would agree with you. There's no point in looking back for extended periods of time, but absolutely no harm, and potentially even a good thing, a very good thing, to review your previous targets and see where you are now, okay? Are you where you told yourself you were going to be a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, okay? If so, give yourself credit. If not, figure out what went wrong and get yourself there, okay? A fresh mind is a productive mind, okay? If you've ever had the best night's sleep, if you've ever woken up, how fresh has your mind felt, okay? You felt like you could conquer anything that day. If you ever achieved something very, very difficult, okay? You felt on top of the world. You felt like you could do whatever you wanted to next, okay? You felt like if you put your mind to something, you can make it happen. Now, most of the time, this will be because you have a fresh mind. You're well rested. You've taken a brief pause. You've taken a break. You've had a look at the objective overview of what the business is doing and what it relates to when it comes to the goals and the objectives, okay? Now you come back with a fresh mind. Your fresh mind is your productive mind, okay? It instills creativity, free thinking, open-mindedness, enjoyment, excitement, productivity. All of these wonderful things come from looking at this with a fresh mind, okay? Now, this is why it's good to sometimes reflect, think back, okay? Understand that, okay, well, I've been doing it that way for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. That doesn't mean it's been the right way. Or it doesn't mean that there's not a better way to do that now, okay? So just because you do something regularly doesn't mean it's the best way to do it, all right? So we must gather relevant information around us and utilize this to make our own constructive decisions on how we would like to progress, okay? So what you're doing here is you're being open-minded, you're listening to external but relevant information, okay, or even internal for something you've learned yourself, okay? And utilize this to make your own constructive decisions on what you feel would be best for your business and your professional career going forwards, okay? So again, it might not be the same. It might not be the same thing as what you told yourself you were going to do a short while ago, maybe a sort of longer time ago, back when you started the business, okay? Or possibly even before you start the business, your plans changed from month 1 to month 6 when you launch, okay? That's fine. Again, we learn more things. Each day we get older as individuals, each day we become a day more experienced, okay? So we must gather relevant information around us and utilize this to make our own constructive decisions on how we would like to progress. Okay, a fresh outlook is always encouraged by experts. They are experts for a reason because they have been following certain methodologies in business. They've been making the best possible decisions where they could, when they could, to ensure that their business became the best that it could be. Okay, now this is a fresh look, a fresh perspective, and a fresh mind. Okay, so that now brings us to the end of topic number 3. I'm going to give you a brief moment to go ahead and jot down any questions for me. Please feel free. You've still got plenty of time to ask them, and indeed jot down any notes before we run into the summary of today's session. Okay, perfect. Okay, so moving on to the recap now. Okay, evolution is powerful. Okay, evolution is a good thing. Okay, universally, evolution allows us to improve. Passions, beliefs, and goals change. Okay, if you feel yourself changing from something that you agreed with yourself before, wonder why. Okay, even in a personal context, maybe you really wanted one car and now you want a completely different car. That's fine. You shouldn't beat yourself up for not sticking to the original goal. Okay, if it has valid reason and if you are working equally as hard towards this goal, there's no problem with changing it. Okay, as long as you don't disrupt any major progress that you've been making. Okay, one of the best ways to not progress is by changing paths every 2 seconds. So you want to be consistent, but if your objectives and outcomes change ever so slightly or for a good reason, that's completely fine. Okay, and refrain from squashing a fresh perspective. Okay, don't stick with your old habits just because they're old habits. Review, look at the fresh perspective. If you genuinely believe that it's not as productive as what you're doing now, then don't do it. But don't do it because it's just not the way you've been doing it today. Okay, so wonderful presenting to you as always. I have got 2 questions in, which I'm very much looking forward to answering for you, okay, in just a moment. So as always, a massive thank you for attending, okay? If you would like to talk to a member of our team, you're more than welcome to head over to iob-business.com/talk-to-us. What you can do when you reach this site is you can book a call to speak with us at a time that suits you, okay? So you're more than welcome to do this. I'm gonna leave the link up on screen for you whilst I go and grab the questions that I have from you today. Okay, so question number 1, when is a suitable time to reevaluate our vision? Okay, perfect, great question. All right, so simple answer here. There is no right or wrong answer to this. You might not feel the need to reevaluate for long stretches of time, and that's fine. But however, if you would like to be proactive, you could have quarterly reviews to encourage yourself to challenge previous decisions, okay? Challenge previous concepts, previous ideas. So quarterly reviews are really a very good opportunity to do this, okay? A quarter is 3 months. Now, quarter 1 starts January 1st, carries on to March 31st, okay? A quarter lasts every 3 months. So every 3 months, you sit down, you review the objectives, the outcomes, the goals that you put forward last quarter, and check if you're on track, all right? But that's a fantastic question, thank you. Question number 2, what if my new desirable is the polar opposite of what I had agreed with myself previously? Okay, so priorities in business change, that's perfectly okay. Just ensure that it is still a productive and progressive path, okay? Now, the reason I say this is because of something, we sort of discussed near the end there, is that you want to be careful and you want to be wary of changing your path over and over and over and over again, okay? Because you will end up sort of eventually halting progress. But if your desirables change, for example, if you wanted to hire, 4 members in your sales team, but you decided that it would be more ideal to have 2 members of sales and 2 members of marketing, something like that makes perfect sense. Okay, that's just an adaptation to suit your business better as you go forward. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, another fantastic question. I'm just going to check that I don't have any more. Okay, perfect. So looks like all the questions that I have from you lovely people today. So thank you very much indeed for joining today's session. And thank you very much indeed for taking the time and spending with us today. It's been a real pleasure presenting with you as always. And I very much look forward to seeing you again in the near future for another IOB business webinar. Take care and bye for now.